Dom Scalise, thanks for being with us here today as we talk about our Mindful series. You are no stranger to the mental health world.
That's correct.
What do you do?
I'm a licensed psychologist. I have a private practice in town and work with people trying to get better.
That's awesome. And not only that, you're also a Heartlander.
I am, yes.
What was the first time you showed up at our building?
2007 is when we first showed up, and then we had a kind of wayward journey and found our way back at some point. So,
well, we're talking about this topic of mental health, particularly that Jesus cares about our mental health. And as I talk to psychologists, I've gotten to know a bunch of counselors and myself kind of walk through that journey and growing in that. I've learned that one of the greatest things we can do for our own mental health is to pay attention to what a lot of people have called like the trinity of mental health: diet, exercise, and sleep. That's my favorite one.
Yeah.
That's got to be a lot of just some of the ways that we fall off the rails.
Yeah. I mean, when you get the question, when people first come in, very often it's like, what can I do to get myself feeling better quickly, and diet, exercise, sleep, that is an easy sort of, a religious, thing to offer anyone. If we can look at any of those areas and practice better, sleep hygiene, for example, look at diet, and figure out, is this right for you, and consult with your medical team to figure out if maybe there's some things you're not aware of that you need to cut back on.
Well, I'd love to take that same approach to maybe following Jesus. Or is there maybe a triad that's similar that comes out of our faith, that maybe following Jesus, putting Jesus first in our life, some of the practices that we have, do any of those have a positive impact on our mental health? If you could create like a spiritual mental health trinity, outside the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, but like the exercise, diet, and sleep of our faith, what would that look like?
Thank you for asking me to revise the Trinity. That feels like a really easy No, I mean, so within spiritual practices, right? So obviously prayer is a big one, right? And we're talking about that all year long, about the benefit of prayer. The research supports that there is a scientific benefit to prayer, meditative practices. When we think about prayer, oftentimes you hear one thing, and prayer, as you know, is more than one thing, right?
Sure.
You're praying on behalf of someone else, praying, looking inward, praying, as a way to praise God. There's many, many, many others. I saw a study that said there's something like 21 different flavors, but it helps improve your self-regulation after you've been in a meditative prayerful state. Your focus, your attention, your concentration, even things like memory, it looks like. So the positive impacts are pretty clear, right, at this point. There's some controversial studies in there about, prayer working for other reasons, intercessory type of prayer, and that's a more complicated body of research.
Yeah.
But after that, things like social connection, friendship within the church, outside the church too. There's Susan Pinker is a social psychologist. She has an amazing book called The Village Effect, which was designed to answer the question of why, originally, it was why do women live longer than men, which everywhere in the world, just about, you see that pretty significant difference statistically, that women are outliving men by years, 5 to 7 years, something like that. And so she's curious about that, like, what's the difference? What is it that's happening here? And she went to different cultures where men lived longer to see what was going on, and there's a little island off of Italy, Sardinia, where she did some pretty outstanding research looking at how are these people living so long. And one of the things she found was just close social connections. Of course, family, that's kind of a given, like if you have family around taking care of you, but talking, being open, this is older research now, but as a family, one of the best things you can do if you want your kids as adolescents to be happy, healthy, productive academically, lower their risk for teen pregnancy, is family dinner.
Yeah, where everybody's talking and everybody's kind of enjoying a meal together.
Right, so even though we love diet, eat the right stuff, it's like, it kind of doesn't matter if you're having KFC.
Yeah.
Well, don't quote me on that.
We're gonna leave that in there.
It's like the talking, the engagement, the making sure that you have relationships that are kind of being nurtured at the dinner table.
And that's so crucial for, community. Is the middle name of Heartland Church, Heartland Community Church.
That's right.
And Jesus calls us to a new family. He calls us no longer enemies but friends, no longer friends but co-heirs, right? So we're part of this family when we come to faith, and there's this element of following Jesus where we become known at a deeper level with one another. And so you're telling me and you're telling us that the Jesus and me type of individualistic faith maybe is incomplete to a holistic mental health perspective. Like, if you're going to walk out your faith, it's even better to do that in relationship with other people.
Yeah, I think more complete, right?
Sure.
The idea that I would never say that having a good vertical relationship between you and God is not sufficient, right? I think we have like at least lots of stories about how the early, desert fathers, did things like that and became hermits and whatnot. Okay. But I think, more complete, like if you want a diversified emotional, mental health portfolio, a spiritual portfolio that is maximizing returns, then absolutely.
Yeah. So prayer
Yeah.
has positive mental health benefits.
Yep.
Friendship, sort of like being known by other people and knowing other people and having them know you, right?
Yep.
What would round out that triad? What's the third one?
So serving others, engaging in something that is sort of superordinate to the self.
Yeah.
And, there's lots of data that giving to other people, time, and not just money, of course, time, being helpful to others, right? Which sort of supports the second piece of the Trinity here, that there's something that you can do. One of the things, again, in the research on longevity, like one of the things that keeps people alive is not just being close with others, but then someone can see you're not feeling well and call the doctor, or say, you know what, you look depressed again, let's go back to the counselor. Or our marriage isn't what it used to be. And that in and of itself is an act of service. I believe that a strong sense of purpose and meaning in life is a very important ingredient, for a good balanced mental health state. And so serving others, again, even if it's in your own family, I think I think the science shows that is helpful for what we're talking about here, of having a good sense of self and a strong emotional, mental health well-being.
So prayer, friendship, and service all have this positive impact on our mental health. Just three things that are pursuits that we all have because we are exploring Jesus and want to see how it is to live the Jesus first life, or because we've been lifelong followers of him. But what's the other side of that? Like, is there another side?
Yeah, well, of course, right? We all know that there's some darkness out there, and I'm going to call this the A-Holy Trinity. Okay.
Okay.
So we have shame. There's research on religiosity that say if you are preoccupied with right and sin, and so preoccupied that is what religion and spirituality is about, right? It induces this high level of shame. And a quick Google search, just like the diet, exercise, sleep, seeing all the negative things associated with shame that gets stuck, right?
Yeah.
It's really central and core to a lot of the psychiatric issues that people come into my office with. They have a pool of shame keeping them from things like diet, exercise, sleep, but also prayer, friendship, close relationships, and of course they're not going to show up to a serve event very often. Secrecy, it kind of goes hand in hand there, right? So these, you can see how these are connected. Just being in the dark. Had coffee with some Heartland buddies. We were talking about men in caves, right? How just being in the dark, sometimes is comfortable in the wrong way at times, right? So secrecy can lead to, of course, a lot of problems. And then loneliness, right? The research on loneliness says it's as bad or worse for you as smoking, right? A pack of cigarettes a day or whatever. And so this was a surprise. This is something that psychologists can get really proud of. It's like this data that says if you don't deal with your loneliness, that's as bad or worse than being a smoker, right? On your longevity and subjective well-being. So those three, of course, like this is really the big question that we kind of talked about earlier. It's like, I know the information, what's really keeping me for moving forward. Very often, the Holy Trinity is in the way.
Yeah. And so the way that actually you've already framed it for us, where if we take these spiritual practices of prayer, praying with and for other people, friendship, knowing and being known by other people, and serving, living your life in a way where you're caring for other people, it actually opens up the door for you to really defeat those three maybe adverse effects.
Yeah.
And to really pave the way.
It can. And there's a piece in there which is really perplexing, which is even for atheists. If you experimentally induce them and say you're in the prayer condition of this experiment, they too have some of those positive benefits, even without the internal belief system.
That's incredible. That's cool. Dom, thanks for your insights and for just sharing your time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Of prayer.
Yeah. We couldn't quite get to the ice cream level with it, but maybe, I don't know, maybe this is a journey we can go on.